The glass door slammed shut, and a woman's voice cut through the hum of the grocery store parking lot. "Don't you dare touch that dog!" Her words startled those nearby, snapping their heads toward the entrance where a small crowd had begun to gather. In the middle of the concrete sidewalk beneath the sharp neon glow of the store sign, a stray puppy sat with his paws tucked under his trembling body. His fur was mottled and dirty, his ribs faintly visible under the thin coat. But it wasn't his frail appearance that made strangers freeze in their tracks. It was what he carried in his mouth. Mara Klein, a schoolteacher who had stopped by for a carton of milk on her way home, felt her breath catch. She had always noticed details others missed: an abandoned notebook in a classroom corner, a bruise on a child's wrist, and now her eyes narrowed on the object dangling from the puppy's jaws. The pup's teeth held it delicately, like something sacred, and his small frame quivered as though he knew he had walked into the wrong world to share it. The air carried the heavy scent of rain-soaked asphalt. A storm had rolled through just an hour earlier, leaving the streetlights flickering against the damp pavement. Shoppers trickled out of the store with plastic bags in hand, their footsteps slowing as the sight sank in. Some whispered, some frowned, and one man even crossed himself, as if unsure whether to pity the animal or fear the omen it presented. The puppy's eyes, wide and liquid, shifted from face to face. His body gave no growl, no bark, only silence. Except for the faint clink of metal whenever he shifted the object in his mouth, Mara felt a pull deep in her chest. She crouched low, her grocery bag resting on the curb, and studied him carefully. "It's okay," she whispered, though the words barely carried over the shuffle of shoes and murmur of the onlookers. But the puppy didn't inch forward. His gaze stayed locked on her, unblinking, steady, as though he had chosen her long before this moment. A child tugged at his mother's sleeve. "What's he got?" The question echoed what everyone was thinking, but no one dared step closer. The puppy shifted, his paws scraping softly against the pavement, and the motion revealed more of what he carried. For a second, Mara thought it might have been trash, something shiny pulled from a gutter, maybe a trinket discarded on the street. But as the neon light flickered overhead, she caught a clearer glimpse and her stomach tightened. This wasn't a toy. This wasn't anything a puppy should have. The tension grew sharper as a delivery truck rumbled past, its headlights sweeping over the scene. The pup flinched, his body shrinking into itself, yet he didn't drop what he held. He guarded it, even against the noise and the brightness, as if it was his only lifeline in the world. Mara's pulse quickened. She had seen strays before, countless ones lingering near dumpsters or wandering alleys. But this one was different. He had purpose, a quiet defiance in his fragile frame, and whatever he carried was the key to understanding why he sat here, unmoving, in front of the grocery store doors as though waiting for someone to notice. A man in a leather jacket muttered, "It's sick. Somebody should call animal control." His voice was cold, dismissive, but Mara turned on him sharply. "Don't," she said. The word was firm enough to silence him, though his glare lingered. She didn't know why she cared so fiercely, why she felt that if she let the authorities take him, something vital would be lost not just to the puppy, but to everyone standing here. The pup shifted again, and the object glinted under the buzzing lights. Mara leaned forward unconsciously, her breath fogging in the cool night air. And then, for a fleeting second, she saw it clearly. Her throat tightened. Her first thought was disbelief, her second, fear. She realized in that instant why the crowd had fallen into uneasy silence. Yet the puppy only lowered his head, pressing the object gently against his paws as though it were fragile. His ears flattened and his eyes searched Mara's face with a quiet plea. It was as if he wasn't just carrying something, but delivering it. As if the weight of what he held was far greater than his small body should ever have been forced to bear. Mara swallowed hard, her heart thudding against her ribs. The night seemed to still, the whispers of the crowd fading into nothing. One truth was clear. This puppy wasn't here by accident. He had come with a purpose. And whatever he carried in his mouth was about to change everything. The puppy did not move. Yet the weight of the moment pressed heavily against the air, as if every shopper and passerby had been caught in the same invisible snare. Mara's knees ached from crouching, but she barely noticed. Her eyes stayed locked on the pup, on the fragile metal gleam cradled between his teeth. It wasn't just the strangeness of it that shook her. It was the undeniable intent in his gaze, a look that carried both desperation and trust. He wasn't guarding a scrap of garbage. He was holding something that meant everything to him. The crowd thickened. A security guard wandered out from the store entrance, adjusting his belt with casual indifference until his eyes fell on the scene. His brow furrowed, and the authority in his stride made the puppy shrink back a fraction. Mara's chest tightened, fearing the guard would treat the animal like a nuisance to be cleared away. She rose from her crouch, planting herself between the pup and the guard without fully realizing why. "Give me a minute," she said firmly, her tone sharper than she intended. The guard's mouth opened in protest, but something in Mara's eyes silenced him. A cold breeze swept across the lot, rustling abandoned receipts along the pavement. The puppy shivered, a small tremor that seemed to pass through Mara as well. She lowered her voice, speaking as though to a frightened child. "It's all right, sweetheart. You don't have to be afraid." The pup blinked slowly, his body still pressed low to the ground, but his grip on the object never faltered. He wanted someone to see. He wanted someone to understand. And then, as if sensing her willingness, he shifted just enough for the light to fall across what he carried. Mara's breath caught. A key, old, heavy, unmistakably human, hung from his jaws. Its teeth were worn, the metal dulled by time, yet there was no mistaking the strange power of the sight. A key in a stray's mouth. Why here? Why now? Her mind flickered with possibilities. Had he been trained? Was he lost from somewhere that mattered? Or had he simply picked it up, unaware of its meaning? The crowd erupted in whispers. A house key. Somebody dropped it. No, he's been carrying it. Look at the way he holds it. The words buzzed like bees, but Mara barely heard them. She was caught between the surreal and the chilling, her thoughts circling around one unshakable truth. The puppy had not stumbled into this place by accident. A boy of about 12 stepped forward, curiosity outweighing fear. "Maybe it leads somewhere," he said, his voice breaking the tension. His mother yanked him back, muttering about disease and strays. But the boy's words hung in the air. Somewhere. The key belonged to somewhere, and perhaps to someone. Mara crouched again, her fingers brushing the damp pavement. "Sweetheart," she whispered, her tone a quiet bridge between her and the trembling pup. "Do you want me to take it?" She extended her hand slowly, palm open, careful not to startle him. The puppy's ears twitched, and for the first time he inched forward. It was a hesitant shuffle, his ribs pressing against his thin skin, his paws dragging like each step cost him more than he could afford to give. The moment stretched taut. The crowd leaned closer, breaths held, as the little creature approached Mara. And then, just before he reached her fingertips, a sharp honk shattered the silence. A car pulling out of its space startled the pup, and in an instant he scrambled back, clutching the key tighter. The sound of metal scraping against his teeth cut through the night like a warning. Mara's heart lurched. She felt the sting of nearly losing him. Not just the dog, but the chance to discover why fate had placed him here in this moment. The guard shifted impatiently, muttering about calling animal control, and Mara's desperation rose. "Please," she said, her voice cracking in a way that startled even herself. "Just give me more time." The puppy had retreated to the edge of the sidewalk, but his eyes never left Mara's. He was still waiting, still guarding, still asking her to follow the path he could not walk alone. And then came the twist. A woman at the edge of the crowd gasped, pointing at the pup with a trembling hand. "I've seen that dog before," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He was outside the police station last week, still carrying that same key." The murmurs swelled into a tide of astonishment. The weight of her words settled like thunder rolling over the lot. Mara's pulse quickened, her gaze snapping back to the puppy, a dog that lingered at a police station, carrying a key he refused to let go of, and now sitting at a grocery store as if waiting to be found. The story unfolding was no longer just about a stray. It was about the secret locked inside the object he carried, and the silent, stubborn determination of the animal who had chosen her to uncover it. The night air seemed to hold its breath, and so did the people gathered at the store's entrance. The puppy had not moved for what felt like an eternity, his small body anchored to the ground as if the concrete itself claimed him. Mara could not take her eyes off the glint between his jaws. She wanted to deny what she had seen, to convince herself it was nothing more than scrap or illusion, but deep down she knew better. The object caught the light once again as the puppy adjusted his grip. This time the shape was unmistakable. It was not a toy, not food, not the harmless thing she had hoped for. It was a keychain, its metallic loop worn and bent, a single brass key dangling from it. And attached to the chain was something far heavier in meaning, a faded plastic tag, the kind that once belonged to a set of house keys. The letters printed across it were smudged but still legible. It carried a name. Mara felt her pulse quicken. She rose slowly from her crouch, her gaze locked on the tiny letters. "That can't be," she whispered to herself. But it was. The name printed on the tag was one she knew, one that stirred an old memory she had hoped would never resurface. Behind her, a man stepped closer, peering over her shoulder. "Whose name is that?" His tone carried suspicion, almost accusation. Mara didn't answer. Instead, she bent forward, her heart hammering. The puppy tilted his head, almost sensing the weight of the moment, and the tag swung like a pendulum between them. The crowd murmured, a restless sound of curiosity mixed with unease. Some speculated it belonged to a lost owner. Others muttered that it must have been stolen. But Mara's chest tightened with a different fear. She remembered the headline from months ago, the one splashed across every local paper. A man gone missing, his disappearance never explained. The name on the tag matched his. The thought sent a chill through her. Why would a stray puppy carry something like this? Had it been dropped in the street? Or had the pup followed someone? Perhaps even witnessed something no one else had seen. The possibilities collided in her mind, each one darker than the last. The puppy let out a low whimper, muffled by the keychain between his teeth. Mara reached her hand out slowly, careful not to startle him. But before her fingers could brush his fur, the pup recoiled and darted a few feet back, pressing himself against the base of the grocery store wall. His eyes stayed on her, pleading yet fearful, as though torn between trust and instinct. The tension broke when a teenager from the crowd tried to lunge forward, perhaps hoping to snatch the object and settle the mystery. The puppy snapped, his small body trembling but his growl sharp enough to send the boy stumbling backward. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. For a moment, the puppy didn't look weak or fragile. He looked determined, like a guardian of something greater than himself. Mara's heart twisted. She could sense it now. This was not a simple story of a stray wandering aimlessly. This puppy was carrying more than a keychain. He was carrying a message, a clue, maybe even the only remnant of a life that had vanished into the shadows. And somehow, he had brought it here to her feet, as if he knew she was the one who would listen. The neon sign above the store flickered again, buzzing faintly like an omen. Mara's mind raced with questions she couldn't voice aloud. Was the missing man still alive? Had the puppy followed him in his final steps? Or was this key the last tether to a story no one wanted uncovered? The boy's failed attempt had scattered the crowd's patience. Voices rose, some calling for the police, others for animal control. Mara felt time slipping away. If they took the puppy now, if they stripped him of what he carried, the truth would disappear with him. She couldn't let that happen. Her voice cut through the noise, steady but urgent. "Don't touch him, please." The words startled even herself, but they carried authority, silencing the chaos for a breath. She stepped forward, her shoes scraping against the wet concrete, and locked eyes with the trembling pup. He lowered his head again, pressing the tag to the ground as if laying down evidence, yet never releasing it from his teeth. His body shook under the weight of the moment, and Mara realized she was trembling too. This was no accident, no random encounter outside a grocery store. This was a thread dangling in plain sight, leading back to something bigger than anyone dared admit. And as the puppy stared at her, refusing to let go of what he carried, Mara knew the story was only just beginning. The store lights hummed faintly, their glow washing pale over the small circle of people who had gathered outside. By now, the stray puppy had become the center of a scene that felt strangely unreal, as though the world had tilted for just a moment. Mara Klein knelt closer, the cool concrete seeping through the fabric of her jeans, but she barely noticed. Her entire focus rested on the object clutched between the pup's jaws. Every second that passed seemed to thicken the air, stretching it taut with questions no one dared ask aloud. The puppy's eyes flicked nervously from face to face, as if measuring each person's intent. He had not moved far from the store's entrance, his paws anchored to the ground with a determination that felt larger than his frail body. The crowd whispered and shifted uneasily, their shadows stretching long across the wet pavement. One woman gasped softly when the neon lights caught the object again, revealing its edges with a fleeting glint. Mara's breath caught. It was clear now, unmistakably shaped, small enough to fit in the pup's mouth, yet heavy with implication. Just as she leaned closer, a sudden noise cracked the stillness. A shopping cart rattled violently across the lot, shoved by a young man racing to corral it before it rolled into traffic. The sound sent the puppy scrambling back, pressing his body tight against the cold glass doors of the store. His teeth tightened around the object but did not release it. For the first time, a faint whimper escaped him, sharp and thin, cutting into Mara's chest like a blade. "Easy, little one," she whispered, but the words seemed swallowed by the tension. The people around her shifted, some backing away, others edging closer. Fear and curiosity tugged them in opposite directions. A middle-aged man muttered, "We shouldn't be here. Whatever that dog's got, it's trouble." His words stirred an unease that rippled through the group. Trouble. That was the very thing they all sensed but hadn't dared to name. Mara's instincts screamed not to let the moment slip. Something about the puppy's persistence, the way he had carried this burden into the open, suggested intention. He wasn't wandering or scavenging. He was waiting, delivering. His wide, solemn eyes locked with hers again, and she felt as though he was pleading without words, asking her to take the weight from him before it crushed what little strength he had left. Then, without warning, a boy pushed through the crowd. He couldn't have been older than 10, his sneakers squeaking against the damp sidewalk. "I'll get it," he said bravely, his small hands outstretched. His mother cried out, trying to pull him back, but the boy had already crossed the invisible line everyone else had respected. The puppy froze, ears perked, body rigid. The crowd held its breath as the boy crouched low, his fingers only inches away. In that suspended instant, the puppy made a choice. With a slow, deliberate movement, he lowered the object from his jaws and set it on the pavement. The metallic clink rang louder than it should have, echoing through the silence. Mara's pulse roared in her ears as the boy drew back, eyes wide. The crowd surged forward, curiosity breaking the fragile boundary of fear. For the first time, the object lay visible to everyone under the harsh fluorescent lights. Murmurs broke into startled gasps, and someone whispered a word that carried through the gathering like a spark through dry grass. Mara's hand flew to her mouth as she understood what she was seeing. It wasn't trash. It wasn't a trinket. It was something that didn't belong in the mouth of a puppy or on the pavement of a grocery store lot. It belonged somewhere else entirely, somewhere locked, hidden, guarded. And now, exposed in plain sight, it had left the crowd reeling, their faces a mix of awe, dread, and disbelief. Mara's gaze flicked back to the puppy, whose small frame trembled from exhaustion. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't look afraid. He looked relieved, as though his task was complete and the weight that had haunted his tiny body had finally been laid down. Yet, in the very moment relief washed over him, Mara felt a deeper chill sink into her bones. Whatever this puppy had carried here, whatever secret he had revealed, was only the beginning of something larger, something none of them were ready to face. The crowd fell into a hush as the object lay in full view. Under the cold fluorescent lights of the storefront it looked impossibly out of place, its edges worn, its surface marked with traces of time and struggle. It was a child's shoe. Small, muddied, and frayed at the seams, the kind no one would glance at twice on a busy street. But here, delivered by the jaws of a trembling stray puppy, it became something heavier than anyone expected. The whispers spread quickly, some people gasping, others pressing hands to their mouths. A lost child, a hidden truth, or perhaps a plea for help. It didn't matter which. What mattered was the undeniable message. This puppy had carried a burden too great for his size, and he had carried it straight into their lives. Mara's heart pounded as she stepped forward, pushing gently through the crowd. She crouched beside the shoe, her hand brushing against the damp pavement. For a moment she couldn't move, overwhelmed by the weight of what this discovery meant. Then she reached out to the puppy, her fingers trembling as they grazed his dirt-matted fur. He didn't flinch. Instead, he pressed his head into her palm, as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. A man broke the silence. "That shoe? It could mean there's a child out there." His voice was thick with unease, the thought pressing into everyone's mind with a force none could escape. Suddenly, the scene was no longer about a stray dog. It was about what lay beyond the parking lot, what might still be hidden in the shadows of the night. Fear mingled with urgency, and Mara felt it rise in her chest like a tide, but beneath the tension, she sensed something more profound. The puppy had not stumbled here by accident. He had carried the shoe like a beacon, demanding attention from those who might otherwise have looked away. In his silence, in his fragile persistence, he had spoken louder than any words. He had forced them to care. Mara lifted the shoe, holding it delicately as if it were made of glass. Around her, the crowd shifted, torn between dread and compassion. She rose to her feet, the puppy at her side, his eyes fixed on her with a trust that pierced through the noise. In that gaze, she felt the message he had carried. The smallest among us can bear the heaviest truths, and sometimes it takes a creature with nothing to his name to remind humans of their responsibility to one another. The crowd began to disperse, some hurrying to phones, others whispering prayers, their faces pale in the glow of the streetlights. But Mara didn't move. She stood rooted in place, the shoe clutched to her chest, the puppy pressed against her leg. She thought of the lives rushing past, of how easy it was to overlook suffering when it came in small, quiet forms. And she realized this night had not been about fear or mystery, but about recognition. The puppy had forced them to see what was too easy to ignore. The rain began again, soft and steady, darkening the pavement until the lights shimmered in long, broken lines across the ground. Mara bent once more, lifting the puppy into her arms. He was feather-light, his body exhausted, but his eyes remained steady, locked on the shoe. She whispered, "You did enough. I'll carry it from here." As she stepped away from the store, the world seemed quieter, the weight of what had been revealed pressing against the night air. Behind her, the glass doors reflected only the glow of neon and the fading shapes of those who had witnessed the moment. Ahead, the rain blurred the road into silver streaks. Mara walked forward with the puppy held close, the shoe still in her hand, knowing the story would not end here but believing the message had already been delivered. The puppy had spoken in the only way he could, and those who saw would never forget it.